Welcome to the Retail Tech Podcast, where we talk about the hidden details of using technology in omni-channel retail. I'm Darius Wasafi with Nathan Colton, my partner here. How are you doing, Nathan?
Oh, fantastic today. How are you?
Great. Good talking to you again. So today we're going to be talking about APIs and retail APIs.
Mm-hmm. So I was just wondering, how are these APIs used in retail? I know they're used in the computer world, but how does it get used in retail situations?
Okay, great question. Today's software applications need to communicate and talk to each other to provide like a complete service to customers through a website or an app. And no company really provides, even if you're working with a partner, they don't handle everything that a complete system is going to need. So computers and applications need to be talking to each other. This communication format is called an API, or Application Programming Interface. API started out decades ago, initially as what was called EDI, Electronic Data Interchange, and evolved through various versions like XML, JavaScript, SOA. Now the latest form of API is called the REST, R-E-S-T endpoints, where individual calls are made to actually do specific things and then provide that service.
So why is this so important that we know these different types of APIs? What difference does it make?
So APIs are used in every retail application. I should, I guess, say not every, because if your application is from 20 years ago, where actually I've seen some retailers that are still working on that, which is okay. It gets their work done. But if you have more, up-to-date current applications, there are APIs everywhere in the back end and also in the front end. So what's the key thing is, your customers, shoppers mainly, are using and accessing our, retailers' applications, like native apps, like on the App Store, iOS App Store or Android App Store, or the websites, in an on-demand format, and they expect when they load a page, they expect it to come up, and they expect it to provide as much information as possible for them to make a decision or to take the next action. What happens is that if you don't use an API format, you're going to jeopardize performance and also maintenance of these applications. So performance, of course, is very critical. We'll talk about it a little bit later. Maintenance is another thing. It's like, if you have a retail store, 1, 10, 100, 1,000, you're going to have to maintain your systems. And the more open and the more current your systems are, the less it's going to cost you in time and resources and money to maintain it and stay current with the customer. So that's why it's very important. You can't have an app or a website these days without multiple APIs.
I see. So explain to me how this part works. Do you have to buy these APIs? Do you create them? How do they work?
So an API is a software application, and what happens is that a service provider, for example, provides an API that they give you a specific address, like a web address, to access their API. And your software is going to go to that address and make a call. Just like, think about it, if it's a call, I'm going to call Nathan. I'm going to say, Nathan, I need one pair of shoes, or I need one piece of information, and you're going to respond to me really quickly, and then I'm going to display. So that's really a really basic form of a call. So these are the applications that are actually making these calls to get the information that is needed. So it's all programmatic. So once you set up an API, the softwares, this different software applications are going to make the communication automatically within themselves. You don't have to work with them anymore. Yeah.
What are some like real life situations or examples that we could see in front of us where, oh my gosh, that's an API, how could we identify them or get a feel for what they are? What would you say, what's an example of that?
So some of the most popular examples are, for example, payments and transaction processing. So if you are taking payments on your website or on your app, most likely 99.99, unless you're Visa or a bank, you are running, somebody else is running the transaction for you. So your system, your computer, your servers are going to make a call, perhaps multiple calls, to run a transaction. One to actually check the credit card. There is another one for a transaction to check the address, validation of the address. There's another one for for example, inventory control. So they're depending on how the system is set up, you're going to have multiple calls. So the other one is CRM systems. Let's say you are capturing some information from your customers and you're going to follow up with them, or you want to, for example, send them a confirmation email, anything that you want to do with the customer's information. That is probably most likely an API call, multiple API calls to different systems that capture and hold the different types of information. The other one is shipping, for example. Another, let's say you want to provide shipping information, you have to make a call to UPS, USPS, and FedEx, as some basic examples.
So these are not like little scripts or something like that happens from like my database to my website. This is about like an outside thing. This goes from my system to someone else's system.
Right. So APIs can be internal and can be external. So the modern software uses a lot of internal APIs as well. So let's say if you have an iOS app that you're providing to your customers, or even using for any reason, the standard way of doing, the best practice way of doing software for this application is to have your app talk to your back-end systems using internal APIs, endpoints, basically. So instead of hard coding every call and all the transaction, you do it on demand at the time, and that's even internal. It has nothing to do with the external software. So there's both types, both internal and external.
Got it. Okay. So is there maybe a web page or something like this that you could show us to give us an example of how this works?
Yeah, so I think a really good example is, you can basically go to any website of a retailer and you'll find a good example. But I like, one of the sites that I like is Target. If you go to target.com and just hit any of the images or any of the ads on the front page, internal ads, they'll take you to a product information page. That product information page is where customers are going to get all the information about a specific product on there. So on here, and I'm looking at, for example, this Apple Watch page. There are images. There are multiple images here. So most likely these images are not hosted in Target itself. They are hosted on a third-party software application company, and they are being displayed on the page using API calls.
Okay. So when we're looking at Target.com, I guess right now it's holiday season, so we have lots of Christmassy things and things like that. But so these little ads and these little call-outs, these pictures, all of those don't really reside on Target.com. They actually reside somewhere else.
Not necessarily. So, for example, if I look at some of the ads could be like, for example, a lot of times coupons. Coupons are handled from third-party companies. So if you see On Target.com, there's something called the Red Card. Red is a brand that's used for it's a charitable or a benefit corporation that's used for with some retailers. That is probably a link with an API call to an outside site. Lists and registries, for example, those can also be maintained by external companies. Gift cards, even weekly ads. So the bottom line is that when you go to Target's website, or if you go to their mobile app, what you see as a customer is a combination of information from different places around the world, all designed to show up on one page for you. And in the back end, everything is handled by API calls. So that's basically what it is. And really as a conclusion, the reason I think this is so important for retailers, of course, I'm not thinking that any retailer is going to actually do this themselves. They all either have their own IT department or external consultants, software developers, vendors doing these things. But what's important is to really think about the type of software that they're going to use, how recent and how up to date are the APIs that they use. If they're using anything other than a REST endpoint APIs right now, I think you might be setting yourself up, you might be investing in old technology. And I would think really hard. Now, you can always get the latest technology depending on what you already have in place.
Would be like this would be like a limiting factor if they went with anything else. They would not be able to get in touch with all the different other services, databases that are out there that could work with an MPOS system going forward.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, software developers can do anything you want. It's just at what cost and how long will it take and how robust and how reliable is it going to be and how open is it going to be for you to stay current in, so.
That's great. Well, thank you for explaining to us what an API is. I'm sure, if we looked it up in Wikipedia, we would never get as much of an answer, of an explanation. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, this is really like touching the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of more details that go into it. But, I think that it's just important for the retail store owners to understand the importance of the API. That's why I wanted to bring up this subject. Yeah, so I guess we can call this one, this episode good. You can always reach us at retailtechpodcast.com and learn more about me and Nathan. We're both entrepreneurs with retail-oriented software companies, and we have a lot of experience in retail, so we would love to answer any questions or discuss any other topics that you would like to have discussed.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nathan. Great talking to you.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.